Zero vision for the future. Toyota, let's go places.
Welcome back. So we've had a lot of great musicians on this program, from Brian Wilson to Willie Nelson to Rakim. I am so thrilled and delighted to welcome this next guest who has meant so much to so many lovers of music. Phil Selway is best known to you guys as the drummer of one of the greatest bands in the world, Radiohead, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2019. Mr. Selway has also had a very creative solo career, releasing albums and a terrific soundtrack, collaborating with members of Wilco, developing his own guitar playing and songwriting. Having said that, nothing will prepare you for the ethereal gorgeousness of his new solo album, Strange Dance. This record is melodic and melancholic. The arrangements are full-bodied. The lyrics and vocals are so open-hearted. It's made with a cast of collaborators that include Portishead's guitarist Adrian Utley, and there's even a live album soon to be released. It is a tremendous pleasure to welcome Phil Selway to Sirius XM.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, John.
Well, thank you. I wasn't ready for the sonic beauty of this record. It's like a beautiful marriage between electronic and acoustic music, and it's all in service of a very deep and, dare I say, hopeful and loving songcraft. And I'm fascinated by how you developed the tracks on this record. Were these songs fully formed in your mind, or are you at a place where the songcraft comes first and the sound of it is to be discovered in studio?
In some ways, the sound of it was there beforehand, or at least the scope of the soundscape, if you like. When I first started thinking about it, I had this kind of like fantasy collaboration in my head where Carole King got to do, as I say, this fantasy album with Daphne Oram,
yes,
who was kind of like one of the electronic pioneers in the UK, and that they'd then invite me along to come and drum on the album. And so that was kind of that set up for kind of like the sonic possibilities of it, really. And within that, so I knew I wanted this soundscape that would be kind of, broad and tall and would envelop you. You could almost like walk around in it.
Yes.
And within that, I had a good idea of the musical voices that I wanted in there. And they're very kind of people that I've been collaborating with over the course of my solo work. So there was an amazing multi-instrumentalist called Quinta, who I've done a lot of work with. Adrian Utley from Portishead, as you say. And then Valentina Magaletti,
yes,
who is incredible percussionist. Now, she wasn't originally in the plan, because part of my original fantasy was I'd be invited in to do the drumming. And I did that for a day, but it just wasn't happening. So at that point, I kind of pulled the plug on myself, had a quiet word, and sent myself packing.
Yeah, that's the part I find fascinating, that it's your record, and you decided in the production to not do your own drumming. Yeah. I'm very curious, what was your process with her? How did you coach on this? Did you let her figure out what she wanted to do, or did you have a sense of where you wanted the beats to go?
I had an idea of the textures that I wanted in there, and then Valentina came in. I kind of approach it from very much, if you're asking somebody to come in because of what they do musically, because of their musical voice, then actually you give them free rein. And, you have that kind of constant back and forth, as in all collaboration, but actually it's essentially their musical voice that you want to come through in it. And Valentina didn't really need any coaching whatsoever. She
should have said direction, I guess.
Again, it's, I'd been listening to her work and knew what she could bring to it.
Yes.
And then she works so quickly, she would hear a song for the first time within about 6-7 takes. She's built up this incredibly singular and rich and just these amazing percussive beds.
That's how you work, isn't it? That's how I've heard you described as working.
Oh, well, I could aspire to that. But it's interesting actually being in the studio with somebody who has that vision, who has that command of what she's doing. it was really inspiring watching her. And then we had these incredible musical beds, these percussive beds then to build the tracks up on top of.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you went through a tremendous creative experience, both in the songwriting and then again in the studio.
Yeah. I mean, before I went into the studio, I wanted to make sure that the songs were, in their basic form, could be as developed as possible, and that they would actually kind of speak in that form. And then, yes, then it was phase 2, the studio, and that's where the record really, really came to life.
I love how you describe it as a collaboration between Carole King and Daphne Oram. I do hear a lot of Nick Drake in both the songwriting and in your vocals. Has he been a guiding light for you?
Yes, he has been, really. I mean, I was kind of late to the party with Nick Drake, as I think a lot of us were.
I'm talking to an American. I know about that. Yeah.
So it was kind of mid-90s when I first came across his music, but since then it's just kind of, it went straight to the core, and it's just one of those artists. I kind of, you listen to it and you feel it kind of speaks to you and speaks for you as well. And yes, I think that's he's featured a lot, quite heavily in, I think, how I've kind of developed my own kind of singing voice, my own sense of where I'm going as artistically as a solo artist as well. And actually with Nick Drake, there was a really beautiful album released earlier this year called The Endless Coloured Ways.
Yes. Which
was pulling together a lot of artists doing Nick Drake covers. It's pulled together by Jeremy Lascelles and Callie Calliman, who oversees the Nick Drake estate. And I was invited to come and go and do a track for that, which was just blew my mind. And so I chose a track off Brighter Later called Fly.
Yes.
And I had if there is a home demo version of Fly, which just is so touching. It's kind of must have been recorded on an old reel-to-reel, and you can hear the bird song in the background. It must have been fairly soon after you wrote the song, because you just get that immediacy of the song coming over. And so, it's one of my favourite pieces of music. And so I asked if I could do that song, and they agreed to it. And I was thinking, great. And you think, oh my God, that's quite a responsibility, isn't it? And so I approached people I'd been working on Strange Dance with, and decided that actually I would approach it as if it was one of the songs that I'd written for Strange Dance. And then, so it kind of went through a similar process to the album. And yeah, I'm just, and then kind of, it's there on this record in amongst this incredible company of other musicians. So yeah, that was a pinch me moment.
Yeah,
really.
I hear the influence. There's songwriting and vocals that are of Northern Sky levels of beauty on this record. And I have read some reviews that describe some of the tracks as bleak. I hope you don't mind. I think this is as far from bleakness as a member of your other band can possibly get. I'm wondering, what did the pandemic lockdown period do for you creatively?
It was interesting how that fell. I mean, like on one side of it, we'd decided as a band that we'd take that year off anyway, before the pandemic happened. Right. And so it was always going to be one of those periods in my head where I was going to kind of, hole up in my studio at home and try and find a way of writing this record. And so in a way, you kind of go into a little bit of self-imposed lockdown when you do that. Sure. So then to actually be in this situation where the whole world is going through the same situation as well, it was just it didn't radically change my plan for the year, put it that way. I mean, it was lovely as well, because I kind of had all our kids moved back in for that period. So, you're very much there in this kind of very heightened emotional place.
Deeply.
And then kind of finding my way out into my studio. That was my space. And then you kind of then go out and you try and process all of these huge kind of emotions that are going on around you. And so that's kind of where the record really, I mean, I didn't want to write a record about lockdown, but it seemed to be a very appropriate time for the record that I did want to write, I think.
You really create that world. And I know you worked with Marta Sologny as your producer, who's worked with Bjork and Depeche Mode. And she's a big fan, of course, of using the tape machine as an instrument.
Yes.
What was that like for you in the studio?
It were a lot of tape machines in the control room.
So I've read in the notes. I mean, it really seems like she just kept them running and just the tape loops of your guitar and then just using them wherever they could be used.
Absolutely, and it's a very immediate way of actually taking songs into a whole different realm very quickly, and that's kind of what I wanted to do with the tracks. And so it's a very inspiring place to start from. And then just hearing how everybody else would come into the studio and respond to what Marta was doing there, kind of respond to their own ideas as well. But there were some very long tape loops running around the studio at points.
It's just such a gorgeous blend of just studio wizardry and basic, strong, beautiful songwriting. My favorite song on the record keeps shifting. This week it's The Other Side, which seems like you're talking to a very specific person. What are you going to do when I meet you on the other side?
Yeah.
Do you? I won't ask you to say who these songs are about, but it seems like the songs do come from a deeply personal place, and then you find a way to make it universal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I try and pull together kind of responses that I've had, or kind of general observations or experiences that I've had. I mean, the songs don't generally end up about being anybody specifically.
Right.
They're more about the emotions that you experience within those situations, and the kind of situations which will prompt those emotions.
A specific person, though, is the inspiration, right?
It could be specific people, could be myself, Mm-hmm. I mean, that could be a very strong dialogue that you would have with yourself as well. So, yeah. Again, coming back to that whole thing of the context that it was written in, you went very much in on yourself during that time.
Yes.
But it was also just with the record trying to create a safe space where I could kind of go into those areas, really.
Honestly, there's so much humanity in this record. I think it's a record for someone in a place of joy, and it's a record for someone in a place of pain to listen to. And I remember hearing an interview with you where you talked about how you worked with the charity Samaritans.
Yeah.
And that you were doing phone work for them, like at the peak of Radiohead's success. What did that do for you? And it seems like that strain of humanity is just something that you have fought to keep in yourself.
Well, that's, if I go trace back kind of to 1986.
Yes.
So it was a year I went off to do my degree up in Liverpool. But it was also the year that we started with Radiohead at the beginning of that year. It was on a Friday at the time. And then I went up to Liverpool. It's where I met my person who'd become my wife as well. And also it's when I became a Samaritan volunteer for the first time. So you've had these three kind of like crucial kind of pillars of my adult life all started then. And they all grew alongside each other. By the time that kind of Radiohead become Radiohead, and we were starting. We got to that point where we kind of seemed to be living in the States, really, just touring here all the time. And actually, when I was going back to the UK, back to Oxford, I found that actually that complete contrast of actually kind of going through that process of going in and being on the phone with somebody else where you just have to focus on them takes you out of yourself.
Exactly. And
you get that incredible sense of connection, that incredible sense of privilege of somebody letting you in on that level. And yeah, I think it, selfishly speaking, I think it kind of, it provided some sanity in a very mad period for me.
In the film Meeting People is Easy.
Yeah.
There's this remarkable shot, I'm sure you know, where the camera remains fixed on you for almost all of the song exit music.
Oh.
And that was a level of respect I'd never seen given to a drummer by a documentary filmmaker. And I've always wondered, did that moment mean anything to you, for that song to have the focus entirely on you and your craftsmanship on stage?
Well, Grant G, who made the film, he was with us, as you imagine, a lot during that year, and he was he put us at our ease. And I think he wanted to approach it from the point of view that actually, yes, this is an ensemble. This is a collective of musicians here, and I think that comes across quite strongly in that piece. And it's not an easy watch.
It's not. That's my favorite scene in the film. Is you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I find myself sitting there just kind of pulling my playing technique apart when I watch it, but that's inevitable. But yeah, I haven't watched actually Meeting People is Easy for quite a while.
It's aged very well. It packs quite a punch. The first time I ever went to London was to do a television special with Paul McCartney, and this was in '97. And at the time, he was so absorbed in OK Computer. He was so into the record. He asked
McCartney.
Paul, he was at Capitol, and I was around all Capitol executives. And this is when they had just given me the Walkman with the OK Computer tape welded inside that could never be taken out. And Paul was saying, "Have you heard this?" and just gushing about the record. And I thought of that this morning, and I was wondering, was there ever a figure in popular music whose admiration for the work of the band really moved you and surprised you and inspired you?
Well, I think I've just hit that moment now.
You didn't know?
No, I didn't know about that.
Man, talk to the people at Capitol.
Mind.
Oh, that's the only record Paul talked about backstage.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just like, that's huge. That's huge. It doesn't come bigger than that. I think I can finish now.
I don't believe you. There must have been someone's admiration that completely blew you away.
I think we've been extremely lucky that we've had kind of, it's almost like mentorship from musicians as we've been going along. I remember in particular when we were out touring the Bends, REM invited us out to tour with them in Europe, and then over in the States. And they were just incredible with us. They very much kind of took us on board, and just by observing how they navigated some very tricky waters, and very open with that, with us as well. Just felt an incredibly generous gesture on their part, and we felt very kind of lifted by that. And those moments, they mean everything to you. People who have been your idols as you're growing up, for them to kind of give you that platform, to take that interest in you. That's amazing.
Do you have a performance with that other band on an album that means the most to you?
Well, I have to say it's probably would be one of the
Pyramid
likely
Song.
ones.
Pyramid Song?
our band.
Yeah, your band. Yeah, that's what I meant. Oh, yes. Oh, I meant your band. Yes, with
yeah.
Radiohead. Was there a song?
I see. I've got you. That band. Yeah.
That other band. I meant. Yes.
So there are. Pyramid Song has got a very I've got a very vivid sense of how I felt doing that one, and it was going from moving during the course of the session day from feeling absolutely hopeless and useless and thinking I'll never get my head around the timing on this song and devoid of ideas, but then actually kind of we kind of persevered with it. I remember Tom and I sat down and we played it and played it and played it, and gradually this kind of drum pattern started to emerge, and it was just kind of following the pushes and pulls of Tom's playing and his vocal. So yes, I was a lot happier with my drumming by the end of the day than I was at the beginning of it. Another track for me which kind of really sticks out in my memory is off OK Computer, and that's Let Down. It's a very simple drum part, but actually it's just so charged with emotion for me. I hear that song and I'm right back in my body recording that, and there's something that felt kind of for me, from my drumming, felt a very unguarded performance there, and that one sticks out. I know we'll probably disagree on this as a band. That's actually kind of one of my favourite Radiohead tracks as well. So
I could ask you about individual tracks all day, but I'm not going to ask you about new Radiohead music because I know you're sick of that. But I got to say, with the work you guys are doing, your stuff on this record and Ed's stuff and the Smile, I mean, it's that sort of thing where it's like, oh, I don't need a new album from these guys. They're doing such interesting stuff there. Does the extracurricular work you do outside the band feed the creativity you all share when you come back together?
I hope it will. Yeah, and that's going to be the next process for us to actually try and, ideally how it will happen would be that actually we'll just get back together and play. That kind of idea of thinking, this has got to lead to a record at the moment, or we're rehearsing for a tour or anything. And I think we're coming back round to that point now. Yeah.
I know you got to run. One last question. Do the songs stay with you as muscle memory, or do you have to go back and retrain yourself to play these songs live? Because some of them seem so intricate to a layperson.
I've not had to think about that one over the decades of us touring. But you're quite right, John. I've got that slight anxiety of thinking, do you know what? I'm not sure I'll remember them all when we come back. I mean, the last time we played was in Philadelphia in 2018.
I was at the New York show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a good tour. That was a really good tour. So I've yet to find out whether it's still there in muscle memory. I'm hoping it is.
I hope we get to find out. Phil Selway's beautiful new record is Strange Dance. The live record is coming out this December, and he's playing live dates now. What a thrill. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, John.
Thank you. And we will be right back.